Lembah Bujang ni memiliki kedudukan yang penting dalam pensejarahan negara kita ni. Sebelum kebangkitan Kesultanan Melaka, kita ada pelabuhan Kedah Tua. Dan berdasarkan rekod sejarah, berdasarkan data arkeologi, pelabuhan Kedah Tua berkembang daripada abad kedua sampai abad ke-14 Masihi, iaitu perkembangan selama hampir 1200 tahun. Tetapi kurang dibincangkan. Hal ini kerana sumber bertulis tentang Kedah Tua itu adalah agak sedikit. Gambaran tentang cara hidup, sistem politik dan sebagainya itu tidak diterangkan dengan jelas.
Lembah Bujang is very significant and very in need of what I would call a curated narrative. There are many archaeological sites in the world that are very vast, which are not necessarily important because they are common. Now in Lembah Bujang, the ruins are very small, but to some extent, some of them are moderately unique.
Kekuatan Kedah Tua itu terletak kepada penemuan arkeologinya yang menjadi titik tolak kepada perbincangan kita mengenai sistem politik, kebudayaan dan sebagainya. Walaupun dia tidak memiliki banyak sumber bertulis seperti Kesultanan Melaka, analisis yang mendalam terhadap data arkeologi mampu untuk memberikan suatu bentuk naratif baru tentang zaman pra-Melaka dan sekaligus meletakkan perkembangan ekonomi, geostrategik dan politik kita sebelum abad ke-14 Masihi. Jadi kajian arkeologi dapat mendedahkan banyak perkara baru yang kemungkinan sebelum ini tak dapat diterangkan kerana kekurangan sumber bertulis.
My interest in architecture is tied into my interest in cities, urbanism and the way people live. So I view architecture as one of the most honest examples of how people come together and live in society.
Pengalaman saya dalam bidang arkeologi ini lebih kurang hampir 20 tahun dah. Peringkat awal pengajian saya dalam bidang arkeologi ini adalah ketika saya belajar di peringkat sarjana muda lah. Pada ketika itu, untuk menyiapkan tugasan saya perlu pergi ke Lembah Bujang. Dan itu merupakan kali pertama saya ke Lembah Bujang. Dan saya membuat keputusan untuk menjadikan kajian Lembah Bujang itu sebagai fokus utama saya.
I would say my interest in Lembah Bujang actually began in primary school because Lembah Bujang at that time was shown in the school textbooks. It was always something that I thought in the school textbooks looked very exotic, and it looked so otherworldly that I thought, oh, when I grow up, wouldn't it be interesting to visit these kind of places?
Lembah Bujang was historically extremely important and relevant in a greater context. It was at that time a space of high commerce. There was many influences in terms of architecture with other neighboring countries like India, Indonesia, in the state of Kerala and southwest India. In Bali, there are also kind of like architectural influences which we can relate with when we've done our archaeological research because there was so much business and commerce happening between the countries.
Ancient Kedah was really a multicultural society. You know, it was a center for trade. We have traders coming from different backgrounds living together with the local populations. There were artisans, there were pilgrims, all live in the same area. And when we want to interpret the archaeological sites that we found in the Bujang Valley, we need to acknowledge these kind of cultural parameters. When we look at the architectural features, when we look at the iconography of the statues, it appears that there is a significant influence of foreign cultures exhibited in the architecture of the structure and the iconography of the statue.
Not so much has been written about it in relative terms. That's an attraction for lots of academics, lots of researchers to fill the gap. It's also a disadvantage because there's limited factual evidence that allows also interpretation, reinterpretation, and in some cases, some would argue misinterpretation of what we see there.
Projek pertama yang saya berkolaborasi dengan TCT adalah satu program yang kita namakan program latihan untuk pemandu pelancong dan content creators, yang mana kami memberi latihan tentang teori dan praktikal mengenai arkeologi. Tujuan utama khusus ini adalah untuk memberi kesedaran kepada content creators, kepada pemandu pelancong tentang bagaimanakah pendidikan arkeologi itu dijalankan dan kenapakah wujud tafsiran-tafsiran berbeza dalam penyelidikan dan tafsiran tersebut. Kebanyakan penerangan tentang sejarah awal kita, naratif negara kita ini berfokus kepada Kesultanan Melayu Melaka. Hal ini kerana Kesultanan Melayu Melaka ini memiliki banyak sumber-sumber bertulis. Kebanyakan sumber-sumber itu memberi gambaran yang sangat mendalam tentang aspek kebudayaan, adat istiadat, cara hidup, perundangan dan sistem politik. Jadi kerana itulah Kesultanan Melaka sering mendapat perhatian dalam persejarahan negara kita.
Certainly, almost all the recent academic writing has either been written in BM or in English, and almost all the informal writing that is easily accessible to the general public is also written in BM or English. I wanted to allow that information to be available also in Mandarin and Tamil. I wanted to bring that identity in using the languages that would make many people feel at home.
Lembah Bujang, nama yang menggambarkan misteri dan pengembaraan. The aim of these audio guides is to make your visit to Lembah Bujang more enjoyable and informative.
We started it by doing a literature review of all existing literature in English and BM that we could find, which is a moderate amount. And so the challenge for us was, if new researchers contradict previous researchers because they are having a new hypothesis or they find something new, how do we then create an audio guide that is respectful of those things, but yet is academically rigorous?
Kami telah berjaya untuk membuat banyak program community engagement hasil daripada kerjasama tersebut, hinggakan kami diberi dana tambahan untuk menerbitkan sebuah buku hasil daripada program kami. Tajuk buku itu adalah Kedah Tua, Sejarah, Arkeologi dan Naratif Baru. Dan di dalam buku itu kami telah menceritakan tentang apakah bentuk tafsiran baru mengenai Kedah Tua yang telah kami terangkan kepada para content creators dan pemandu pelancong tersebut.
The process of ensuring that the product was scholarly was very, very strict. So what we tried to do is try not to contradict existing research, but to try to holistically package it in a way that the layman can understand. The reason I wanted to work on the audio guide was because I think Malaysians should tell Malaysian stories. And I think really as Malaysians, we should take the opportunity to tell the story of our own country in a way that is supportive of its development and respectful of its history and respectful of its diversity.
This project started as a simple grant application from my side to Think City. They liked it a lot and actually commissioned the project back to us. So it wasn't actually implemented as a grant, but as a commission project. And this allowed us to think a bit more long-term in terms of collaboration and project implementation.
The Blue Temple was a very interesting collaboration. They bring in technology to the heritage question, to the archaeological question, which is very, very fascinating. So they do it by photogrammetry, where essentially technology 3D maps terrain as well as any remains of any building and then rebuilds it digitally.
The goal of this project was to come into an archaeological project with architectural tools. So bringing in our skills in terms of 3D modeling, it was a very interesting process because we were able to kind of come in with a slightly more holistic approach. On one side, we were able to go through a massive amount of material within the archive of excavations and reports that were done since the 80s. And so navigating through this archive was important for us to kind of extract information and clues that were speculated upon by archaeologists to reimagine what that structure used to look like at the time of its prime.
They involved us because essentially they wanted to ensure that what they were doing was historically accurate. We also advised them as to the relative appearance of the building when in use. Now, this was the major challenge that Blue Temple faced. When these digital models were constructed, they went through another rigorous round of proofing, including by local experts like Dr. Nasha.
Sudah semestinya ada beberapa bahagian yang saya komen lah. Contohnya untuk cadi Bukit Batu Pahat, pada pandangan saya dia punya bumbung tu tak setinggi tu. Tapi namanya pun conjectural reconstruction, jadi dia terserah kepada tafsiran designer tu.
It's a project that has never been done before. We needed to compile a lot of research into a single model, and using every pieces of information we have access to and combining it into a model. So it's kind of like putting together a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. It's not just about form finding, but it's really looking into the tectonics of the building. And even though it is speculated, it's possibly the closest as we can get with the amount of information we have.
Reconstruction of the temple panels is in progress as I speak to you. The exact location and date of assembly will be up to the museum department to decide, but they will be manufactured and ready for assembly.
Saya percaya ia merupakan satu usaha yang penting yang memberikan tafsiran visual tentang keadaan sebenar tapak tersebut sebelum dia runtuh. Ini merupakan satu usaha yang bagus supaya pelawat yang datang ke Lembah Bujang dapat berimajinasi tentang keadaan sebenar tapak tu pada masa lampau.
When we speak of prehistory or prehistoric times, we say they are prehistoric because they occur before someone tells the story, right? So when we speak of history, it means his story. So before someone tells his story about the place, they are prehistoric. So in the case of Lembah Bujang, not very well documented. Hence, they are to some extent almost prehistoric.
Projek yang kedua merupakan projek arkeologi Bukit Choras, dan ia melibatkan kerja-kerja ekskavasi dan konservasi artifak. Projek kedua inilah yang membawa kepada penemuan patung ketiga kami. Apabila kami menjalankan ekskavasi fasa ketiga, kami telah membuat satu kejutan besar apabila patung yang ditemui itu adalah lengkap. Walaupun ekskavasi itu cuma memakan masa lebih kurang masa sebulan saja dan kawasan ekskavasi itu adalah kecil, tapi impak penemuannya itu adalah besar.
Lembah Bujang represents our prehistoric stage because it's not very well documented. And if you imagine that the oldest civilization in Southeast Asia is actually from Malaysia, how many people outside Southeast Asia would believe that? And the reason why we perhaps are not well known for that is because it does sit slightly uncomfortably in that prehistoric part of our history where it's not very well documented. So I wanted in my own small way to contribute towards documenting it, to move the site from prehistory to history so that we can have something there which we can proudly proclaim as our own.
I'm very happy with what we have created. The team was very functional. We collaborated very well. We were able to extract as much information as possible with what we have. We collaborated with other archaeologists who validated our design officially. So we think it's the closest possible image we can get with the information we have at the moment.
What is special about the Bukit Choras site as compared to the other archaeological sites that we have in the Bujang Valley is the site was intact, and most of the materials that we found alongside with the structure is still in the original position. It was not disturbed. So that enabled us to have a robust evaluation regarding the cultural features of the site and what kind of relation that it had with other economic and cultural hubs in the region. The recent data that we have had shown the significance of the site regarding the amount of data, and it also gives us some picture regarding the multiculturalism which happened in the Bujang Valley, as well as the geostrategic interest of Bujang Valley to the other powers during that time.
In order to do good research, you always need to know which parts of the canvas do you need to be filled, which parts of the canvas do you not understand, which parts of the canvas can you contribute to. And I think it's very important to be humble enough to know that you cannot contribute to everything, and neither should you attempt to contribute to everything.
The work is far from being over. We still have lots of things to do, but today I am extremely happy with the result of our work, and this is due to the fact that we get all the support from our academic staff, from our technical staff, from Think City, as well as different government agencies which afforded all the help and support that we need.
It really taught me to understand or to appreciate what I didn't know, which is a lot. I managed to work with people who are very good in technology, who managed to contribute to that. I managed to offer a narrative which I'm happy with, and Think City was happy with and very supportive of. And I think that overall collaboration was very good, and it allowed me also to meet a variety of people who I otherwise would not have met.
It's been such a great experience working with them. They helped us navigate through the complexities of the administrations and organize important meetings with the heritage departments, with different ministries, in order to actually sign off on the construction of some of the projects and implement in the real world the research that we've done. So the next part of this project is obviously going to be to publish the work and the research we've done. And the next phase basically is to allow the public to access that research.
What I think the public will see, if they get the chance to see the models, will be something very complete, very presentable, but they may not be able to appreciate the very painstaking process that Raphael's team went through to create it, the curation and the carefulness that we went through to really bring forward something that tries to bring history to life.
Personally, I would like to continue my research in the Bujang Valley. A large part of Bukit Choras had not yet been excavated. There are also many other sites in the Bujang Valley which had not been studied properly, so we need to continue with the work there. Bukit Choras just stood by itself, so I was extremely curious to know what is the function of that site and what is still being buried down there. And as I mentioned earlier, I didn't expect to find such a beautiful structure because it was located far from the population center. And we have not yet able to answer many questions regarding the site.
The future curation of the site is still a work in progress. And I think whatever happens, we hope that we are contributing towards a more sustainable future really for Lembah Bujang.
Negeri-negeri utara ni adalah satu kawasan yang sangat kaya dengan pelbagai bentuk warisan. Kita kena faham multiculturalism had always been part of our identity. It was there during the period of Ancient Kedah. It continued up to the Sultanate of Malacca, and it continued until the modern day. So it is something that we cannot change. It is part of our identity.
It's very difficult to maintain archaeological sites in Malaysia because even if you don't do anything to them, weeds will start to grow, moss will start to grow, lichen will start to grow, and that tends to degrade remnants, remaining sites. Once a site has been abandoned for years, especially in our climate, things grow on top of that site. So once you remove that, it's typically below the new ground level. It can be subject to flooding, it can be subject to all kinds of problems. So I think my short-term hope for Lembah Bujang is that it can be well maintained.
Moving forward, kita perlukan pendanaan untuk penyelidikan. Tapi pendanaan bukan segala-galanya. Kita perlukan lebih banyak koordinasi antara NGO, kerajaan dan juga akademik supaya program libat sama komuniti itu perlu dimajukan. 5 tahun daripada sekarang, saya harap lebih banyak penyelidikan akan dijalankan. Kita perlukan satu proses untuk kita mengesan bakat-bakat baru. Saya rasa banyak sekali orang-orang muda yang mampu untuk spearhead projek-projek community engagement tu. Dan pada masa yang sama, saya berharap agar komuniti setempat dapat menyokong penyelidikan tersebut.
Harapan saya adalah bahawa Lembah Bujang akan tetap diraikan oleh rakyat Malaysia kerana ia merupakan satu tempat yang amat penting dan yang boleh mengakibatkan para pelancong dan juga para akademik dari seluruh dunia datang ke negeri Kedah dan menyumbang kepada kemajuan negeri Kedah dari segi ekonomi, dari segi sosial dan dari segi kebudayaan.
Arkeologi Malaysia ini merupakan satu usaha untuk kita memahami tentang kebudayaan manusia lampau berdasarkan kepada tinggalan material dan rekod bertulis. What we have today in a modern society is the continuation of what we had in the past. And understanding the past enables us to understand ourselves right now and prepares us for the future.